Are you ready for the word? You're going to die, you're going to die, you're going to die. And if you don't have Jesus, you're going to burn. That's what a lot of people hear when they know that I'm coming to visit them in their home. I work as a hospice chaplain, and so a lot of times when they hear the chaplain's going to come by, it's a really bad thing that a lot of them think. And so sometimes they're like, no, we do not want this person to come by, because what could he honestly say that's not going to make us feel bad in some way? And there's a lot of things that I like to talk about and share with people in those circumstances that I think help. And I'd like to share 3, I'll call them mini messages, that they all tie together, but they can be separated. So these are some things that I often will share with people that I think help process, especially end-of-life related circumstances, but also I think help us live rightly today. So I've titled this Death, Honor, and Kingdom. So first of all, I'd like to address a question that, a lot of people don't think about, is the question of why do we die? Why do we die? I used to assume that answer, and I've heard it shared so many times over the years that it just became a part of the accepted answer. So, if you've heard that we die because of sin, there is an element of truth to that, but there also is an element where I don't believe that's true. I do not believe we physically die because of sin. I do not believe we physically die because of sin. Go to Genesis 2:17. Now this is a well-known verse. Yahweh was telling them what they can and can't do in the Garden of Eden. And specifically when he talks about the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, he says, you must not eat. For when you eat from it, you most assuredly will die. Some translations will say, in the day that you eat of it, you will surely die. And in the Hebrew there, it's actually used the word death twice. It's like you're going to essentially die death. Like it's sometimes he might be saying it twice to reiterate, like this is the most important death. You could maybe put it that way. Now we know when they did eat of the tree, of course, they did not physically die. Even the serpent said, hey, Yahweh knows if you eat of it, you're not really going to die. And so afterwards, even if Adam and Eve had talked with the serpent, be like, hey, you lied to us. And the serpent could go, well, look, you're not dead. Look, you're physically fine. So most of us understand that there is a spiritual death implied, an internal death that supersedes or is more important than this physical death. But there's still this connection of believing that at least things physically began to die. I've heard, different varieties of that, and well, hey, did the animals start to die then? And, different questions like that are kind of, can kind of get into a lot of hypotheticals. But I believe that Genesis also shows us an implication of why we die. Turn to Genesis 3:22. I'm going to go ahead and read this for us. Then Yahweh Elohim said, "Behold, the man has become like one of us, knowing good and evil. So now, in case he stretches out his hand and takes also from the tree of life and eats and lives forever." Yahweh Elohim sent him away from the Garden of Eden to work the ground from which he had been taken. And he expelled the man, and at the east of the Garden of Eden he had cherubim dwell along with the whirling sword of flame to guard the way to the tree of life. Now this is at the end of a number of other curses that he had described and given. Curses on the land, curses on the serpent, curses on the woman, curses on the man. But this kind of ends off this curse, this, you could say, ultimate curse. So this is his response. They have sinned. They have had this internal death. And now he's saying, look, if they still have access to the tree of life, they will live forever. And that is unacceptable. So, we're going to kick them out. We're going to put a guard there. And the way, you could say, to eternal life, the tree of life, as long as you had access to it, you would live forever. So he guards the path to the tree of life, and he prevents mankind from having access to that. So there's a sense in which he prevents people from having eternal life in a physical sense. But why? Why did he allow this? Why did he prevent access to being able to live forever physically? The most widely seen theory that I've heard when I've talked with people about it, and when I studied myself, was that it's because he has mercy, that he doesn't want you to live forever in sin, in a state of sin. And I do believe that's true. But I don't necessarily think it's the primary reason. And here's why. The things that accompany sin, the things that accompany death, or we're talking about pain, sickness, disease, grieving even, different forms of things that show that physically something is missing. Physically, we're missing something. Whenever we have those things, pain, sickness, disease, death, what happens to us? Now, when everything's going hunky-dory, in other words, good, when we're feeling good, when, finances are great, when health is good, when everybody's happy, those are not typically the times that you start to ask, well, hey, where's God in this? Where's Yahweh in this? It's primarily when we know something's wrong. When I hurt, when someone I love hurts, when I lose somebody, all of those things, you get a prognosis. Oh, hey, you have this sort of cancer, or you have this sort of disease, or you have this sort of ailment. It's in those times that we go, I need to make things right here. I need to, get on my knees. I need to talk with the Father. I need help. And so I see those as things that are essentially physical aids. to help us know that there's a more important death to deal with. There's a more important pain to deal with. There's a more important disease to deal with. Because as much as I don't want to see anyone in pain, as much as I don't want to see death, and we assume that, well, hey, when you see someone hurting, when you see, especially diseases that are very painful, or you see people like dying of hunger and things like that, a lot of people will question, well, hey, why would God allow that? Why would He allow that? Surely there can't be a creator. Surely there can't be someone up there if He would allow something like that. But that's assuming that these physical ailments, these physical lackings, these physical pains are the worst thing that we could go through. And I firmly believe that when Yahweh looks at sin, He sees that as a worse death. He sees that as a worse pain than anything else we could go through. And so, sometimes that can sound harsh to people. Well, why would God allow me to go through this pain? Why would God allow me to die from this? Why would He allow someone that I love to go through this? And I'd have to, at the end of the day, say He allows you to go through those things to call you to seeing that there's something more important. There is a more important death to deal with. And as we all know here, of course, that's through Yeshua, that He is the ultimate dealer with what will happen with death. So when it comes to the question of why do we die, why do we go through these things, these are parts of the answer of how I work through those to help people understand that, hey, what you're going through, what you're feeling is kind of meant to help you recognize that there's something more important that we have to deal with. And one day it will all be dealt with. So my second mini message. I'd like to go over one of the most under-esteemed commandments of the 10. Now, here we're used to bringing back the Sabbath and trying to understand, hey, what does that mean for us today? But there's another commandment, I think, that gets ignored significantly, and that's the command to honor your father and your mother. And as a kid, I used to think it was just, well, hey, you say yes, sir, and no, sir, or yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am. As a verbal respect of, hey, they're my elder, and that's what it means to honor my father and mother. But I'd like to move beyond what does this lip service honoring, beyond that. And I know as I grew up and worked it through my faith, there were some elements where I was like, oh, how you live affects how you say that you honor your father and mother and how they raised you or something like that. But I'd like to even move beyond that. So I'd like to look and see how Yeshua interpreted this commandment. So go ahead and go to Mark 7 and verse 5. So Mark 7, verse 5. Now, this passage, there were a number of Torah scholars, Pharisees, scribes that were questioning Yeshua on, we could say, minor aspects of, you could say minor aspects of the law, but a lot of it was about their own commandments, their own teachings, their own religious precepts, however you want to put that. And so we're kind of picking up a little bit in the middle of it. But starting verse 5, the Pharisees and Torah scholars question Yeshua, "Why don't your disciples walk according to the tradition of the elders? Why do they eat bread with unwashed hands?" And he said to them, "Rightly did Isaiah prophesy about you, hypocrites, as it is written, 'This people honors me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. And in vain they worship me, teaching as doctrines the commandments of men. Having left behind the commandment of God, you hold on to the tradition of men.' He was also telling them, 'You set aside the commands of God in order that you may validate your own tradition. For Moses said, "Honor your father and your mother, and he who speaks evil of father or mother must be put to death." But you say, if anyone tells his father or mother, "Whatever you might have gained from me is korban," that is an offering to God, then you no longer permit him to do anything for his father or mother, making void the word of God with your tradition that you've handed down, and you do many such things." So, in order to unwrap what he's saying, you kind of first have to understand what is korban. What is this that the command to honor your father and mother would be brought in? Hey, you're ignoring this by doing this korban thing. So, to the best of my understanding, korban is essentially earmarked or set-apart resources if devoted to a religious charity or duty, absolve a son or daughter's responsibility to their parents. I'm going to say that again. Korban is earmarked or set-apart resources if devoted to a religious charity or duty, absolve a son or daughter's responsibility to their parents. In other words, if you give this kind of extra tithe, this extra monies, if you give that to the church, or you give that to some religious group, even the temple, if you do this holy-sounding thing of resources that should have gone to taking care of your elderly parents, your parents in need, you earn better credit with Yahweh than if you were to actually use those resources towards your parents. So he's saying, hey, you've got this teaching that by saying you can essentially, rather than wanting to take care of your parents, or maybe you're wanting to get extra credit with Yahweh, if you devote this money to the church, you devote this money to the synagogue, or to us, the Pharisees, you're earning a better credit than if you were to take care of your family. And Yeshua is calling this out as evil. Now, before I understood more of the validity of the commandments and instructions for us today, I certainly kind of read over this passage. It didn't really hit me very strong. And over time, it's hit me stronger and stronger and stronger. And I know that you heard the commandment to, when I was reading this, about honoring your father and mother. But there was a second commandment that he quoted that is often missed and overlooked. Now I'm going to go ahead and quote the commandment. He quotes Exodus 21:17. "Whoever curses his father or his mother must surely be put to death." Whoever curses his father or mother must be surely put to death. So why is Yeshua quoting a death penalty commandment in connection with honor your father and mother? in correcting religious authorities. I mean, it's just not something we've grown accustomed to thinking of something as the death penalty worthy thing. Whenever I read this commandment earlier in my life, it was kind of like, oh, well, that kind of sounds like God is, this is Old Testament God type of thing. To say something bad about your parents is now death worthy. It seems like an overstatement of things. It seems like that just can't be right. So I'm just going to, kind of forget that. But Yeshua is quoting that here in response to this teaching of, hey, you can use your resources somewhere else, and you don't have to take care of your parents. You don't have to take care of those that are elderly and needing help in some way. You can give it to the church and get extra credit. Everybody likes extra credit. I did in school. So, why is he quoting this death penalty commandment? We've all heard actions speak louder than words. Well, if Yeshua is interpreting this command of speaking evil or cursing against one's parents, if he's equating that with neglecting the elderly, then he is saying, if you do that, especially purposely, that is a worthy thing of being put to death for. I mean, I think that's a clear conclusion if you understand the commandment and clear authority for it today. So Yeshua interprets Moses as authoritative in present circumstances. He believes that neglecting one's parents for even holy-ish sounding things can be criminal. He believes it can be law-breaking as worthy of being put to death. So honoring our parents is important with our tongues, but how do we honor and care for them with our actions? In our society, this is very, very true in the West. Not so much in a lot of Eastern or I'm not so sure about South American, but there are a lot of cultures that value the elderly, and so when an elderly person stands up, like they has something to say, they listen to it. We've been raised in a Western culture that essentially despises parents, despises elderly, and there's all this emphasis and importance in what a teenager says on TikTok or Twitter or like little kids essentially, but they had a cool sound or a cool song, or they were on a TV show, and now their words are more worthy of being listened to by the world than someone who is elderly that has a lot of wisdom about things. So sometimes when I'm talking with families of the elderly, of families of people that have at least a prognosis that, hey, it doesn't look good. They may be near the end of their life. Sometimes in trying to help them wrestle with the question of how do I honor my father and mother, I'll ask the reverse, as how do you shame your father and mother in this circumstance? Now, there are lots and lots of cases that are kind of case by case, based on what someone's resources are, what someone's capabilities are, how is someone's health as a caretaker. There's a lot of really complex questions that kind of go into it on a case by case basis. But let's say an ideal situation. You got all the resources in the world. You got all the time in the world. You got lots of siblings that are in the same place, And at the second that one's parents, things don't look good, all right, let's put them in a home. Is that honoring, or is that shameful? There are circumstances that I've seen, that I've gone in, and I've seen the way that someone takes care of their parents, and I plead with them, please send them to a nursing home. They'll be in a better situation than they're in right now, because for various reasons, they just can't. So understand when I say this, it's a case by case. So it's one thing that each person has to wrestle with. How do we take care of those in need? So don't think, I think if someone ends up in a nursing home, they're automatically, their families are automatically bad people or something. That's not what I think. But I have gone and spoken in many nursing homes, and I'll look around, and there's a lot of people there that I think their families could have taken care of them. Like, that some of them aren't really that bad off. But someone just said, you know what? I'm not dealing with it. Just not. So, with thinking on processing how we honor our parents, would you be confident standing before Yahweh with concern to how you have honored your father and mother? It's a personal thing you have to wrestle with on how you work with those in need. And as a kind of secondary thing, think about one day you're going to be old. One day you're going to have health issues. And know that your children are going to see how you take care of them, how you respond to them. And so those things don't just go unnoticed. I have seen, essentially, as someone is near the end of life, their kids start to act like vultures. Well, hey, I'm going to get this from mommy. I'm going to get this from daddy. No, that's going to be mine. And already start claiming all these things like a vulture around a corpse. And it sickens me. Third mini-sermon. How do we process death, sickness, pain? If it does not awaken us to greater need, then we're blind to its purpose. So when we look at, hey, all these things that we go through, it is very comforting and very important to know that one day, as long as you and your name is found in the book of life, that one day these things are going to be over. That goes for the goodish things, but it also goes for all the bad things. As long as your name's in the book of life, you have everything to look forward to. So with that, I'd like to go to Revelation 21. Revelation 21, starting at the beginning. This is a backdrop. This is John the Apostle. He's had all these revelations, and now we're near the end of those. So this is after the judgment, the second death. In the previous verses, if anyone was not found written in the book of life, he is thrown into the lake of fire. So, judgment's now done. Now let's talk about what's coming. It says, "Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the sea was no more." Now, I've heard a lot of theories about new heaven, new earth. Is it just a renewed heaven and renewed earth? I don't think that fits in with this verse. It sounds like clean slate. We're doing something new. Like that's done. It says, "I also saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband." Now, anyone that's ever been married or engaged or been involved with a wedding party in some way, if you're reading this is not him saying, and then I saw a new city just made right then. He's saying, no, as a bride adorned for her husband. You're talking about a lot of preparation. This place has been made with care, with thoughtfulness, with attention to detail. I know when my wife and I, when we were looking at getting married and then talking about where we were going to have the wedding venue and all that jazz. At first she says, like, "Oh, I want a simple wedding," and I'm like, "Okay, that's great." And then she's like, "Well, I was wanting to have it in my parents' backyard," and now at the time there was, I'm not going to say no to a lot of things, but I was sitting there thinking, I don't really know how this is going to go. Because I remember there was a whole bunch of junk in that yard at the time. And I was like, oh, okay. But over the course of the next few months, they terraformed the land and, added all these lights and the trees and, planted grass and all these special details. Mr. Martin had built all of these tables by hand and then built all these benches. And the whole family was in on it. We're talking about tons and tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of preparation. It didn't just happen. So this holy city, this New Jerusalem that's coming out of heaven and then coming down, says it's as a bride adorned for her husband. And skipping ahead, and then I'll come back. In verse 10, it says, Then he carried me away in the Spirit to a great and high mountain, and he showed me the holy city, Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, having the glory of God, her radiance like a most precious stone, like a jasper, sparkling like crystal. So he sees this city in the air descending, and it's an amazing jewel. It's more beautiful than anything he's ever seen. It's a specially adorned, prepared place. And I think it was about a year ago, maybe it was 6 months ago, I was meditating on this. And one day it hit me. This place, and all of Revelation 21 and 22 describes this place. And what it's like to be there. This place is the place where Yeshua said, I go away to prepare a place for you. I had never connected these two passages together until recently. So, when I thought about, well, hey, what is this place that he goes to prepare for me? It was completely left to my imagination. He's going to make this, this mansion for me, and, I'll have all my dogs and all this stuff. I don't know. It was just, and every country song has some sort of imagination on this place that he's made. But it's described. The place that he's going to prepare for us is described in the end of Revelation. And while it's on my mind, last week, Pastor Steve had talked about the second heaven and the third heaven. And I have to say, that was really complex for me. I'd never heard anything like that. And so there's still, I don't know if both of those heavens are coming down and then they're paired together on the earth and they're seen as one. Or it's talking about the third heaven coming down. That's something to explore that I'm not as used to. But for sure, what he goes on to describe of this New Jerusalem I'm going to kind of give a summary of what this place looks like, and then kind of come back to what is it like to be there. So, this city. Now we know he ascended up into heaven to prepare this place for us, and it's adorned. Like he's very specific with how it's all going to be done. It gives descriptions of the size of this city. 12 gates. 3 on the north, 3 on the south, 3 on the east, 3 on the west. Each of them has the names of the tribes of Israel and the apostles. Says it's essentially about 2,000 miles wide and about 2,000 miles long. You're talking about a massive, massive city. That's almost as big as the country, our country. It's a massive city that is literally above us, where his throne is, and so it's right there. We just can't see it. This massive city, it already exists. It's not imaginary. It's not going to be made in the future. It already exists. And you may be in final preparations, tweaking flowers here and there or whatever. But it's almost done. But it's already there. We just can't see it with our eyes. So this city, not only is it about 2,000 miles wide and about 2,000 miles long, it also talks about it being about 2,000 miles high. The tallest structure in the world, I don't think is even a mile high. I can't remember off the top of my head. But we're talking about, it's so big that you're standing next to it. You can't see the height of it. You can't see the end of it in any direction. I've heard theories. I talked with Matt about it one day that maybe it's in the shape of a pyramid. Usually people think of it's like a cube, but it could be some sort of other type of structure. I don't know. But it's a massive, massive structure. And part of it makes me think that if, this is an assumption, this is inferred, if we use an analogy, if the old Jerusalem, which is only 40 acres large, the old city of Jerusalem is not really that big. You can walk across it in 15 minutes. It's really fairly small. Like when you read the Bible, you think it's a lot bigger, and it surely went through a period where it was bigger. But it's still not that big. It's a very small place. If the old Jerusalem, in its size, is compared to the size of the earth, and then you did a little analogy of, well, hey, if the new Jerusalem is comparative to the size of the new earth, then I can't even comprehend how big that is. So it's this massive, massive, massive place with a massive city that will be our home. There are descriptions of this city, of all these different types of materials. It describes the streets and the walls being made of gold, but clear as glass. So essentially, crystal, but the feeling and weight and material of gold. I can't really comprehend what that's like. It talks about 12 foundations of the city. I don't quite comprehend that. Does that mean 12 floors? I don't know. Every 100 miles or so? I don't know. But there are these immense dimensions, these special stones that it's made of, and they're mentioned by name in Revelation 21. And each one of these stones, light can pass through. So it's not just a hard rock that what you see that's it. But that any light that passes through it changes the colors. And the city doesn't have need for light because Yahweh himself, Yeshua, will be the light of the city, will be the lamp of the city. I can't comprehend this. It's very hard for me. It talks about that there won't be any need for the gates to be closed, but there's going to be gates. One of the interesting things to me is it says that each of the gates is made of a single pearl. So giant pearl. The width of the wall, or the depth of the wall, I guess, is essentially about the size of a football field. And it's a very immense wall. And if the gate is the size or the depth of the wall, you're talking about a massive pearl. Is the pearl the size of a football field? How do you walk through it? I don't know. Maybe there's a hole that you walk through. I don't. But there are these immense dimensions, these fantastic descriptions, each of things that light can pass through, that are wonderful and valuable materials. And one of the introductions that is described in Revelation is the return of the tree of life. Now, I used to think that when we were created, that we wouldn't decay naturally. But if the tree of life prevented the decay of physical flesh, then why is it back? You get what I'm saying? It's one of those things, why do you need the tree of life if you got a perfect body? And so I think it's inferred that there's something about the tree of life that gives us renewed life physically. And we'll have that internal life that is pure and blameless and good at that point. But why else is the tree of life there? And it produces fruit. It says it produces 12 kinds of fruit. One for each month. So I have to assume there's still 12 months. There's some sort of lunar cycle still. These are things that I don't know what all the purposes are. I don't know how that informs us about certain things for us today. But this place, in all of its descriptions, it's not that it will be made. It's not that it will be created. It's that it already exists. It's above us. We can't see it. And I think that's incredibly encouraging for us to know that as long as I've made things right with Yeshua, as long as I'm living right through Him, and I have the Holy Spirit working through me, and that my name is found in the book of life, I can know that my future home is actually above us right now. I think that's really fascinating. I wasn't thinking about sharing this, but my wife and I, we lost a home. Everybody here's seen it. Maybe not both halves of it, but we had bought a double wide from a family. We were going to have it moved, and it got stolen, trashed, repaired, lots of criminal stuff. And eventually it was just totaled. And so we had a lot of hope in being in this home that I had seen and I had described to her, and so there was a lot of excitement about it. And then it just completely destroyed us to know that home was no more. We couldn't go to that home. Eventually, started looking again and found a new one. So I had shown pictures to my wife. I tried to describe it, tried to explore it. I took a video walking around with her with it to show her, because she was taking care of her baby, and this home was 3 hours away, something like that. So it was just too much. So I'm trying to pique her curiosity and excitement about this place. It's like, hey, is this a home we can live in? And I got the go-ahead. She is excited about it. Let's go for it. And it'd still be another couple months till we had it in person. But knowing that we had a home secured, the down payment's there. I've seen it. It's physically there, and it's on the way. That was very, very exciting for us, and I was so, so thankful to have a home again. Knowing that Yahweh has this place above us, that Yeshua is preparing it for us, and knowing that it's not just a thought, it's a real place, it's a real thing He has for us, it should excite us. Hey, my home's already secured. Living for Him should be easier. It's not a risk. When you look at risk reward, it's not like, hey, I hope all this is true. I hope this place exists. I hope it's all there. No, it's what you have to risk is very little and compared to what you have to gain. And if you recognize, and I really encourage you to read the rest of Revelation to really kind of mull on this home, because it's our home. We just don't see it. I was talking about this other place being my home, but this is still a temporary home. My permanent home is coming, and that should elicit immense excitement about us, is that we as the bride, we as Israel will be with the groom. The wedding banquet's coming. It's going to happen. And so there'll be this wedding banquet, and hey, we also got a new home. It's a very exciting thing to think about. Now, I'm going to read, picking up with verse 3, to feel what this place will be like. So I've described it in many words and kind of my own thing, but how does he describe that feeling? So, I also heard a loud voice from the throne saying, "Behold, the dwelling of Yahweh is among men, and He shall tabernacle among them. They shall be His people, and Yahweh Himself shall be among them and be their Elohim. He shall wipe away every tear from their eyes. Death shall be no more, nor shall there be mourning or crying or pain any longer, for the former things have passed away." And the one seated upon the throne said, "Behold, I am making all things new." Then he said, "Write, for these words are trustworthy and true." Then he said to me, "It is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. To the thirsty I will freely give from the spring of the water of life. The one who overcomes shall inherit these things, and I will be his Elohim, and he shall be my son. But for the cowardly and the faithless and detestable and murderers and sexually immoral and sorcerers and idolaters and liars, their lot is in the lake that burns with fire and brimstone, which is the second death." So, this may be a more eloquent way of saying you're going to die, and if you don't have Yeshua, you're going to burn. But that is, that's like a real short way of saying it that doesn't come across with the excitement of, hey, what does it mean to be in new covenant? What does it mean to have new life? What does it mean to be saved from death? He wants us to be saved from death, and he wants us to look to him for that healing. In every bad thing that we have gone through, as long as we have found ourselves in the book of life, which is essential, then everything, bad thing that we have gone through, every bad memory, every hurtful thing will be healed. Even if we can remember it, it won't have pain associated with it. I think we'll see Yahweh's glory and his healing through even the most horrendous things that we may have gone through. So that's something that I like to share in sharing what Yeshua has for us. There was a lady that she was on hospice. Her health was deteriorating. She had been living independently. She came to a point where she could no longer really take care of herself. She lived alone, but every single one of her children, and she had a lot of children, all of them lived nearby. Now, they're trying to figure out, well, hey, what are we going to do with our mom? So they had a big meeting. Hey, what are we going to do? What are we going to do with mom? We can't take, someone has to be with her. She can't be by herself anymore. She had one request. Please don't send me to the nursing home. Please don't send me to the nursing home. Anything. I want to be at home. Anything that you can do to keep me at home. They had their family meeting. There's a lot of, I don't know how many resources they have, but you get enough kids together, you're going to have something. Some sort of option. I said, she's going to the nursing home. She died on the way when she was picked up to go. She died of heartache. And that's my belief. The one thing, the one request, please honor me in this one thing. And out of all the resources, out of all the capabilities of her family, they said no. While I know there may be things, and I'm sure there are things that I don't know about their situation. If I do know it right, I would say Yahweh looks at that and he says, you've broken this commandment. You have not honored your father and mother, and by your actions, you have essentially cursed them and cursed your own family by this action, because, that will always be a memory. It's like, how'd mom go? And we broke her heart. The way that we process death, the way that we process dying and decline in health, we all have to wrestle with, hey, why do we go through these things? How do we go through these things? And how do we heal from these things? Sickness, pain, and death point us to our greater need. That there's an internal death that occurred in mankind that we need to be healed from, that we need new life into. We're all going to go through these things, and loved ones of us are going to go through them at some point. That is inevitable. But how do we process that? How do we honor one another? How do we take care of those that have taken care of us? How do we honor these instructions, these commandments that he gave to us? And Yahweh has a plan to make everything right. All the wrong things will be made right at some point. And what he wants for us is he wants us to be in on that plan. He wants us to have things right with him through Yeshua and what he has done in the past for us, but also looking forward to what he will do for us and with us in the future. So, death, honor, and kingdom. Yahweh, we come before you today to thank you for what you have blessed us with. You have been so good to us. There's a lot of things that all of us have gone through that we want to turn those things over to you, that we would recognize that your instructions and commandments for us are for our good. They are for life. They're to help us through these things that we find that are hard at times. How do we honor our parents? How do we honor you through this instruction? Now, I know you have an amazing place, a home for us forever. May we just seek you with all of our heart, mind, soul, and strength to ensure that our names are found in that book, so that one day all things will be healed and we will have this amazing home with an amazing Savior, with Yahweh himself. I pray all these things in your name.